guys, and welcome back to another video. In this video we're doing another player review, this time it being Ryley Sanders, with the news of the injury, or the repeat injury I should say at this point, of Adam Treloar's calf, I believe it was. 8 to 10 week, it was an 8 to 10 week injury, that said. For the likes of Adam Treloar, it can present opportunities, and there's probably two guys. I could probably do this in tandem, I guess, to a certain extent, but the main focus will be Ryley Sanders, as he presents probably the best value for the Dogs in terms of that midfield. We know the run that he went on in the VFL, and also I want to just bring up the stats that he had in the intra-club game. I will be using Bales's review this time, just that sort of tweet that he put out as well, just using that as well as a reference point to sort of back up the claims, I guess, to a certain extent. But anyway, let's just jump into this video here. So as you can see here, I'll just start it off here and go through here. Ryley Sanders, 656k. This is Bales is doing a great job here with the reviews as well, or the passing on the information as well from the in the knows at each club. Ryley Sanders, one of the best players during the match sim, playing through the midfield, 30 odd disposals and 3 goals, and especially there's one video of one of the Ryley Sanders goals at least, where he just basically gets about, I think it's 3 if not 4 touches, 2 or 3 handballs, and then on the run from the centre square, and then just gets the last release handball from about 40 metres out, takes another 5 steps, and then just buries it from 35 out. So yeah, he just dominated, and that's what we need. We know that Ryley Sanders, we know priced at 64 in Fantasy, and in SuperCoach priced at the same price point as well, pretty much 62.9 and 63.9. And if I do the player summary for Ryley Sanders and bring up his SuperCoach, we'll go through the same process as we did for Will Day and Will Ashcroft. If only Sanders was a Will Sanders, that would have made really good sense and would have followed the trend. But anyway, here we go. We know that in his junior years, and we can bring these numbers up here through the Fantasy, that he was the #1 scoring midfielder. We know that in the carnival for the under 18s, he had a ridiculous carnival. I don't know what the exact numbers were, but I know that he was the first midfielder in that large, in the carnival, and 77.2 from 26 games in the NAB League, and that was across 3 years, including his juniors, his like underage years. 79 from 19 games, but if we go to his most senior year, I'm going to say it was about 10 games for a solid 80, 90, let's just see, 106.8 from 9 games in his most senior year in 2023. We know that around the carnival, I think he did 117, I want to say, in the NAB League. I think I can actually bring that up here quickly. State leagues, do we have VFL Sandford Coats? I don't think we have it exactly, but yeah, he definitely did really, really well in the under 18s national champs, in a midfield that had both him, Colby, and also Caden Cleary, and that's why you'll see or hear me talk about Caden Cleary a little bit throughout the season itself, or the preseason, I should say, for the Swans' sake, because he could be getting a better role. But those 3 were doing really, really well, as well as you had Harley Reid for Vic Country, playing pretty well in that 2023 carnival. And that's the reason why those guys are the big names to take that next big leap, because a lot of them, especially if you look at Colby, potentially has a better role this year. Well, it could be a down year for Colby, actually, because he gets sort of a new role that he needs to adjust to, where it's a little bit more physical. And then you've got Sanders getting a better, just a non-sub role. And then you've got Caden Cleary getting a non-sub, potentially some midfield role. So all 3 of those guys are starting to get better roles, and show that fantasy pedigree from that under 18s carnival that they had for the Allies. So anyway, as we said, 106.8 from 9 games in the NAB League. And then if we go to his, we know, as I said, 63.9 from the all the games that he played. But if you remove the games where he played in no vest, it was 70.1 from 9 games, which that's already 7 points of upside. If we look at those games as well, and you'll see here, if we actually go and take out games where he played less than 30% on ball, you'll see that suddenly rises to 74.5 from 4 games. So a little bit low sample size, I would say, which is a little bit annoying. But even that, if you say, oh yeah, I want 35%, which lowers it dramatically, then it goes up to 85. But at that point, you're starting to really get into low numbers of sample size, and we don't like that. We want to try and get that sample size up to 10, 15, 20 games. Obviously, with Sanders having only played, I think it's 14 games, it's kind of hard to get those big sample sizes of games, comparative to sort of those like Will Days and even Will Ashcroft to a certain extent had larger sample sizes for midfield on-ball games. So there's that. If we just go quickly to his VFL form, and I want to say that this VFL game here was at the same time almost as the Sydney sub game, so he might have doubled up there, but I'd have to double check the dates on that. But you look at that, 7 games, 116 in the VFL. If you take out this one game that looks a little bit odd, VFL round 8, 2024. If we look at that was the 17th of May, and then we look at his player summary here, that's the SuperCoach, and then we look at this game here, round 11 at Marvel Stadium. For this game here, when was this played? Do we have a date for this? Round 11, AFL round 11, 2024. It was played on the, let's just grab this up. Round 11, oh no, it's played the week after. Okay, that makes sense. Thursday the 23rd, so that was played the week after, so no, you probably should be adding that, as that was a game that he did play full-time on ground. So yeah, 116.1 in the 7 games. If you take out these 3 games and then just leave it at the last 4 games that he played after he got subbed out, he went 119. It was ridiculous. He's also had, what's that? In the 7 games, if we add these back on, he's had 3 games of 120 plus. Or is that 4 games? 4 games of 120 plus, and also 6 tons in 7 games, which is quite ridiculous. You're not going to see that obviously in the AFL. So obviously he's got the VFL form that is too good for VFL. It was quite funny that he was just well too good. You can see here that he had a 112 from 21 disposals in the VFL, which is quite hard to do, but he also had a 35 disposal game, 39, 24, 42, 28. He's had all those big games, which probably shows that he should be getting a decent on-ball time, because he's shown it in the VFL. He's the best guy that played in the VFL last year for longer than 4 games or whatever. And then we get to Ryley Sanders, and you look at his SuperCoach numbers as well. Pretty similar outlook, that if you just look at all of the games that he played here, and we go back here and you look at that, he's at a 73.1 in 9 games there, and we show that it was a 70 or something. And then also, if you just remove this down to 30%, I think you'll see a very similar outlook, that he goes up to 79, which is already plus 16. And I think that's a similar role that he can get this year with the likes of a Adam Treloar out, with there only being, 38 days. We know that Adam Treloar got injured a good 3 days ago, I'd say. 3 days is about right, which puts him at about round 3, or if not 4 returning. If that's round 3 to 5, I think is the return date for Treloar. And the good thing about that for Sanders is, one, you can, if Treloar has a side sort of a setback in that and goes back to sort of round 6 to 8, then Sanders is an even better pick. But at that point, you can start to look at those early round bye players coming off of it. We said 3 to 5. GWS and Gold Coast are already off their bye at that point. So maybe a Brent Daniels. You also have, if he gets, if you want to trade him out after round 4, or in round 4, you've got the round 3, the 4 teams, off that. as well. So maybe at that point you do trade into a Bailey Smith, but I think most will be starting Bailey Smith. So you could do that. So like I was saying with Will Day, it almost is a mirror image of what's going to happen with Will Day, except Will Day has the open role itself, whereas Sanders, it's a role that could close very, very quickly. But you've got that kind of mechanism there where you can trade into someone else. Everyone basically is on the table at that point. You'll probably have enough cash at that point to do what you want to do. If we look at the fantasy price projector and we go and we look at that as well, and I'll show you what I'm sort of thinking about with Sanders, and I think the same sort of theory will come up as we did with the likes of a Will Day. If we look at Sanders, where is he? He was around that 656k. Yep, same price as Philippou, which is kind of a blessing. If we go and say, oh yeah, he's going to average, what do we reckon? 85, I think, is a pretty reasonable number in the first 3 rounds. So rounds 1, 2, and 3. So rounds 1 here, 85 goes up to 674, then goes up to 704, and then goes up to 738. 738k, and we're saying that some of these guys here aren't really going to be changing too much in terms of price. And then you add, say, 100k on top of a rookie or something like that, who's already had a double price jump. And suddenly that 730k that we said turns into, say, an 850, 860, 870k. And maybe you really do like the likes of Isaac Rankin, and he's going 95. Suddenly that 730k, and you can get that Isaac Rankin readjust that you need over Sanders, who's going to lose that role, because we know that the Western Bulldogs run a tight CBA rotation. You'll see it here. Obviously remove English because he's a ruckman. You've got Treloar at 80%, Bont at 75, Libba at 72, and then Ed Richards, when he does play on ball, is in that 70-80 range. But then he also had through, 4 games where he didn't play on ball, as well as 2 or 3 games where he played as the 4th banana behind Libba, Bont, and Treloar. As you see here with the 38, the 32, and the 39 in 16, 19, and round 21 respectively, as well as a little bit in the Hawthorn and the Sydney games across the year. So you see that, but you also see Sanders getting some time as that 4th banana when Ed Richards didn't play, or Bont sort of rest forward, or no, sorry, Libba didn't play in round 11. And then you've also got as well any other games where you've got, sometimes Libba and Ed Richards didn't play a little bit, and that's where you had Harvey Gallagher playing on ball. So you always see that they kind of have that, at least 3 guys 70% plus, at least, and not many teams do that. If we go to, and I'm just going to use Sydney for a staple as this point, you look at this, Sydney had Heaney 58, Rowbottom 42, Chad Warner, Errol Goulden there. The next game, if you look at Sydney, there's never really 3 guys above 70%, and it's always sort of a 4 or 5 man rotation. You look at games like this, I can't even pick up a game where they went 3 guys above 70%, other than this GWS. Other than finals is when they sort of nailed it down a little bit, but they always had someone like an Errol or a Luke Parker having some on ball time, or even a James Jordan or a McInerney there. So that, having said that, what the point is here is that Western Bulldogs do run a very tight rotation comparative to every other team. You see the big numbers, and then the 4th on baller because there were some injuries, and then Ryley Sanders down there. If we look at 2023, you'll see a very similar result here, in that you've got Bont, Libba, Treloar in there, and then McRae played half a season in there, and Bailey Smith played a little bit in there for games when there wasn't a guy such as Adam Treloar being injured, or Tom Liberatore being injured, etc. You have that a couple times. And then in 2022, I think you'll see a very, very similar trend as well. Obviously, Stephen Martin or Ruckman is going to get some time there, but you've got Jack McRae 60. This was actually a year where they had quite a lot of players running through there, where they had Dunk, Smith, Bont, and Libba and McRae in there. But obviously, they don't realistically have that this year. Just seeing the year before that as well. Even the year before that, they had McRae, Bont, Libba, and then even Josh Dunkley down and Adam Treloar in the 40s and 30s. So they had the three main midfielders and then a couple of sort of substitute midfielders almost. So that's something I feel like will happen this year quite a lot, is that you'll see that you'll have Bont, Libba, and probably Ed Richards, top three midfielders, all get 75% plus. Okay, we know that that's 225%, at least 75% left. We know that 75% isn't just going to go to a fourth midfielder. It's probably going to be split between, I'd hazard a guess, three guys, but it leaves a 40 to 50% role, I'd suspect, for the fourth guy. And whether that be Matt Kennedy or whether that be Ryley Sanders is the big debate. And this is why I said in the intro that I could almost pack them both together. And this is why I'm just going to quickly highlight Matt Kennedy. If we go here, he's at 791k here, as you see, 77.1, and I'm pretty sure basically the same price in SuperCoach, if not a little bit, I want to say a little bit cheaper, but I could be wrong about that. He is priced at 414k, 76.9, and a, what did I say in fancy, 76.9, something like that, 77.1, so pretty much dead on the same price. And you'll see with, and I know that someone did this with Matt Kennedy, is that if you go 30% CBAs or more, there's a lot more data with Kennedy. And I'm just going to quickly show you it because it relates to Ryley Sanders here. And I'm just going to show you in fantasy. I'm not going to double it up. But if you look at Kennedy when he plays, don't need that one. That one's kind of unfair. 30% CBAs when he actually gets on the park. You'll see here that he does dramatically well. If we just do this, and then we'll go back to like the end of 2023, because beyond that, it's kind of getting a little bit awkward. You can almost include that. That's 67%. That's an almost normal game time. And then we'll do this one. And then, yeah, he starts to play on ball most weeks. So if we just go down to the end of the 2022 campaign here, because that's sort of where I'll cut it off at, you'll see 92.9 in 31 games. Very, very consistent game time. Obviously, I don't expect him to get the full on ball, so I'm kind of cutting out the 60% plus games, just to cut it back a little bit and show you what I sort of expect from him. But if we do that and we do all that, you get, if I quickly do that, 21 games for an 89.8. So there is 10 to 12 points of upside there if you kind of try to fidget him into that 30 to 50% on-ball role. So yeah, if you start cutting out sort of a plus 55%, I think you're going to get a very similar number there as well, just quietly, if we cut all that out. 91 from 14 games. Yeah, 91 from 14 games. So that's the scoring that has come in to replace a Jack McRae, kind of. So when you look at that, and I mean, obviously you're going to have Treloar go down, but then Treloar gets sort of replaced by Ed Richards, sort of similar scoring. So if we look at, then you have to almost go to an Ed Richards here quickly just to see what points was Ed Richards scoring in terms of that. So Ed Richards was scoring 86. You pretty much replace that Kennedy with his, Kennedy gets to an 86, say. And then if we go to McRae quickly here, he's here anyway, 71.4. So I think there definitely is upside for Ryley Sanders. We know that when Ryley Sanders plays, and this is why I'll quickly just search up Jack McRae to show you when he wasn't sub what he was scoring, because I think that's what Ryley Sanders can do. I don't think Ryley Sanders will be in the sub role at least early on in the year. But if we just go to even just sort of taking everything out, I want to say it's going to be very, very similar scoring. If we just go here, 77.3 in 15 games. I think that's something that Ryley Sanders could do from the start of the year, 77 to sort of 85, somewhere in that range there. And I feel like it's the pick that, even though a lot of content creators, including myself, said don't just go straight Philippou to someone else because he's the exact same price as Philippou is Ryley Sanders, especially in, I know in fantasy as SuperCoach it might be slightly different. Don't do that exact swap, but in terms of it, he may be the guy that you kind of have to go for just because there's a potential. There is that potential with his ball winning ability that he gets a spike 110 game and suddenly that cash gen just blows it out the water. You get that huge score in the bye week that pretty much, he's the type of guy that could easily cover a premium in the bye week just because he goes that large. Like a Bailey Smith in round 3 could cover, or even on a differing line, cover like a Callum Mills or something like that, or Callum Mills type of score. So that's why we sort of say to go for guys like this and go with what's probably going to be the crowd on this, because Ryley Sanders is 18% owned. He's probably in Team Vanilla at this point. And he's only going to rise if I look at Fantasy, AFL Fantasy Home. If I go to the Fantasy Big Board, where is it here? You'll see his ownership is going to rise as Sanders, and I could probably grab it straight up here in a second once this loads. You're going to see that Sanders will have his ownership rising quite dramatically. It was at the start of the game about 6 to 9% ownership, and then since basically the Philippou news, he has gone up to 18.6. I expect that to probably rise into the 25-30% range, just because more people are still jumping off Philippou, more people with the Treloar news, as we know. If we just go here up to Treloar, who should be the top of the pack, I would think. Top of the pack here, Treloar, even though he was barely owned, but you can see a drop off of, what's that, a quarter of his ownership. So 25% drop in his ownership in the last 10 to 15 days, the last 2 weeks, especially a drop of basically, what's that, 20% ownership in the last 4 days, 5 days. So you can see that drop is there, relating to the injury, and the drop coincides with the big jump in the likes of the Sanders ownership. And for me, as I said throughout this video and sort of leaning towards it, I feel like he's going to be Sanders, that is, he's going to be a 80 to 85 type of guy. I feel like if you look at the point share between the Western Bulldogs guys, he's not going to, and that's with the 30 to 40% sort of fourth CBA role. I feel like he gets that comparative to other guys, and I feel like that will allow him to get that sort of 70 to 80, the 80 to 85 scoring, and that will just get his price jumping quite quickly and allow you options in that round 4-5, because that's when Treloar is slated to come back, but also we know setbacks can happen, especially Treloar. That's a second or something time that he's done it this preseason. That I think it's a calf injury. I could be wrong, but it doesn't matter too much about the type of injury. The injury timeline's 8 to 10 at the moment. We know that can ping again, and that could be a delayed for him, and if it's delayed, then we probably get Sanders for more. But these are the type of opportunities that we know aren't going to last the season, but you kind of have to take advantage of when they come up. But anyway, I think that's a good point to leave it. I think I explored sort of the reasonings behind why Sanders is probably a good pick. He's got massive discount value because of the Bevo factor, and that's probably one thing that's almost going against him, is just Bevo being Bevo. But Bevo definitely stuffed him over a little bit last year. You've got the fact that an injury there to the likes of a Adam Treloar. You've got Jack Macrae sort of vacating that space alongside of, well, Bazza Smith wasn't there, but you got Jack Macrae vacating that fourth banana role. And then you've also got him being a forward as well. Is a lot easier to stomach than a midfielder at that same price point, because we're talking about the same prices like an Ollie Hollands or a James Peatling almost at that point. 25k is not that much difference in terms of price point. But anyway, all of those said, and then probably the negative is an unsure exact timeline for Treloar to come back. We know 8 to 10 weeks is roughly round 3 to 5, but that can change. And then secondly, the Bevo factor is almost a negative in itself, even though it's a positive that it's got him to this underpriced point, as if you take out the Bevo factor, if he didn't get subbed, he would be about 715, 730k and in fantasy, and probably a good extra, 8 points per game is another 40k in SuperCoach. So yeah, I just think it's a good option in both platforms to start with him and then see what happens in rounds 3 to 5, as you'll get that early price rise. Well, not early, I should say, that first price rise in SuperCoach, as well as in fantasy, you get that price rise, and hopefully Trelaw will be out long enough that you can get to the early buy players, especially that, or at least have access to 6 of the early buy teams by then, as they'll have served their buy. But anyway, if you did enjoy that video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload. If you're listening on Spotify, give me a follow and a rating over there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.